What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today, listen, I want to continue to talk about the focus on the offensive line. It is so important. It cannot be understated. I really believe the Jets have identified this as part of their identity, part of building from the inside out, and it is such an important piece to any team's success. I mean, it really changes absolutely everything. There are so many examples of it. Previously, I talked about the difference for Saquon Barkley going behind the Giants' offensive line to the Philadelphia Eagles' offensive line, right? Think about where Aaron Glenn comes from. The Detroit Lions, who have one of the best offensive lines in all of football. Think about the recent Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles and their offensive line and what they had. But quite frankly, I think the Jets now have their best offensive line since the mid-2000s. When we're talking about like DeBrickashaw Ferguson, Nick Mangold, Alan Faneca, and those dudes. And hopefully we can kind of return to that kind of prominence and that kind of production in the offense. Let me put some stats on this from last year, okay? First of all, one thing the offensive line has to do is protect the quarterback, right? Look at the lowest pressure rates in the NFL last year. Baker Mayfield, second lowest, 23.2% of the time. That means on 23% of his dropbacks, he was under pressure. Less than a quarter of the time. Second best in the NFL. Josh Allen, 23%. Jaden Daniels, 24%. Bo Nix, Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts. These are guys all in the top 7. And guess what? All those teams went to the playoffs. Look at the fewest quarterback sacks. This is, again, from quarterbacks that played 15 or more games, right? Josh Allen and Jordan Love, Bo Nix, Lamar Jackson, all kind of towards the lowest end. Guess what? All of those teams made the playoffs. This is what happens. And when you look at sacks, you know who had the most sacks in the NFL last year? Caleb Williams. Okay, and he was a rookie. He wasn't helped by that Bears offensive line. You know who else probably wasn't helped by that Bears offensive line early in his career? Justin Fields either, right? So, I mean, as you can see, the idea of having an offensive line really keeping that quarterback clean and allows that quarterback to make more reads, deeper in their progressions, and better accuracy, to be sure. It also clearly helps the run game. Look at this stat for running back yards per carry before contact, okay? Saquon Barkley, 3 yards per carry before contact. Before anyone ever touched him, he was already averaging 3 yards a carry. That led the league. Jahmyr Gibbs, who we talk about all the time as kind of the Detroit version of what we hope to see with Breece Hall, right? Second in the league. Derrick Henry, third in the league. James Cook in Buffalo, fifth in the league. You know what else happened with all those teams? They went to the playoffs and pretty deep in the playoffs for some of them. By the way, in this very same stat, Breece Hall last year was 33rd in the league, yards per carry before contact at only 1.3. So imagine if this offensive line can allow Breece Hall to get another 1.5 full yards before contact, then his skill set can kind of take over. And I think that is absolutely huge. There is no understating the kind of upside we now have with this offensive line. I really believe that it is going to be key, and quite frankly, why the Jets are going to be able to be in games because of this offensive line. You hear it all over the place, and I certainly agree with that. And, of course, the crown jewel of our 2025 draft was the offensive line selection of Armand Membou. We have been talking about Armand Membou, kind of his measurables, his stats, the attitude he brings, and what people like Aaron Glenn and Darren Moji have to say. Here is even more from Aaron Glenn about working to be able to coach Armand Membou. Check it out. We see how he operates. We have some guys that operate like that too, so it's really our identity. Once again, talking about the brand, the vision, the identity, right? He goes, it's really an easy pick for us, and we were looking forward for him to get here because I'm ready to coach that player. He's going to be one guy that we can really help get better. We were really excited for that pick. Again, on brand, the identity, and how we are building a physical upfront team that you've heard Glenn say it before. People are going to see it on tape. People are going to have to prepare for it. People know we are going to be aggressive. We are going to be physical. I've said it before. I will say it again. Armand Membou did not allow a quarterback sack in last year. He did not allow a quarterback hit last year. He only allowed 3 sacks in 3 years at Missouri, a PFF grade of over 90. He absolutely crushed the combine in terms of the athletic measurables for an offensive lineman. Was top 3 among all the offensive linemen in all of those, whether it be the 40-yard dash, the broad jump, the vertical jump. It does not matter. And this line is also young, and that is very, very important. They're going to be able to grow together, build together, and do more and more as they gel, just like we saw, for example, like Aaron Glenn saw in Detroit with the Lions, like we've seen with Philadelphia, with the Eagles. And then you have a running back like Saquon, and remember, yards per carry, 3 yards per carry behind the Philadelphia Eagles line. A year earlier, when he was with the Giants, he was actually tackled behind the line of scrimmage more than any other back. So the impact of the offensive line is absolutely huge, especially for a developing quarterback like Justin Fields. There is no way to understate how important the offensive line is and that it changes absolutely everything. And with Tippmann, Simpson, AVT, Fashanu last year's first round pick, and Membu this year's first round pick. We are young, we are talented, and it should have a huge ripple effect for this team. One other thing I want to talk about here, you may have seen last week that the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to trade George Pickens away to the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, they got a 3rd round pick in response, and you may be thinking, well, what does a Steelers-Cowboys trade have to do with us? Well, remember the big elephant in the room, right? The big elephant in the room is Aaron Rodgers going to be the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers? And this is why this is kind of interesting, and it could have implications for us on the green and white, right? Like, you would think that Aaron Rodgers would want a win-now team with all the weapons possible. So the idea of trading away a guy like George Pickens, when you could have paired him with DK Metcalf, which would have been attractive to Aaron Rodgers, is intriguing, right? There are rumors, there are reports out there that part of the reason George Pickens may have been expendable for the Pittsburgh Steelers is because if they do in fact have Aaron Rodgers coming in, remember how Aaron Rodgers, when he came to the Jets, he brought a lot of his old buddies from Green Bay? Could that be the case with Alan Lazard, the current Jets wide receiver? If you remember, we just restructured his contract. We were thinking that he might have been a cut, he might have been a trade, but then we restructured his contract. It's only now $2.5 million, I believe, far less on the cap than the $11 million contract a year he signed, right? And so now the question is, why would Aaron Rodgers go to a place that is depleting wideouts unless he's going to bring his boy, Alan Lazard, to be the wide receiver to their opposite DK Metcalf? That is interesting. We will see. I personally don't understand why the Jets would actually want to necessarily do that, to go ahead and lose Alan Lazard, who they now have on a cheap deal, and also to help Aaron Rodgers and another team in the AFC. I don't necessarily see that happening, but keep an eye on this. This should be on the radar, as Alan Lazard is going to be kind of in the news and on the radar in terms of trade talk if, in fact, Aaron Rodgers does go over to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, Pittsburgh's got to do something, right? Whether it's they have a kind of understanding that Rodgers is coming, or they make a deal for someone like a Kirk Cousins or a Derek Carr, they're going to still have to do something. They're not going to go at it with Mason Rudolph as their quarterback. And one name to watch, if, in fact, Lazard does get traded. Remember, I thought that was completing the wide receiver room. They also drafted Arian Smith, the burner over the top. The thing is, I've been talking about the different roles they play, right? We know there's wide receivers out there like a Keenan Allen. I think he would be more like a Josh Reynolds. I don't think that's a fit. There's an Amari Cooper. I don't know. He would also be more like a Josh Reynolds type, like maybe a number 1 kind of type. I don't think that is a fit. If they lose Alan Lazard to Pittsburgh to kind of go in support of Aaron Rodgers, one name to watch is that the Jacksonville Jaguars just cut Gabe Davis. Okay, you remember Gabe Davis had a great game in the playoffs for the Bills against the Chiefs. He went to Jacksonville. They cut Gabe Davis, so he is out there, and he is kind of more of the style of wide receiver that Alan Lazard could be, another big body, potential blocking kind of guy. Keep an eye out on Gabe Davis if these dominoes do fall. I don't necessarily think they do. I think the Jets want Lazard for now, especially at his contract, for some of the blocking that he can do, as the Jets have really rounded out their wide receiver room with vets, good hands guys, the Yak King, Malachi Corley, the speed guy, Arian Smith. But It is plausible because it makes no sense for Aaron Rodgers, who certainly is in win now mode, to go ahead and lose a wide receiver like George Pickens unless they have some idea on how they would go ahead and try to replace that. So keep an eye out on that. But what you really got to keep an eye on is this new above average, young, physical offensive line for the Jets and how it can absolutely change the fortunes of so many things. Look at what it does for these quarterbacks. Again, all of these quarterbacks made the playoffs because they're staying clean, not getting sacked. Look at what it does for these running backs, right? Because they get ahead of steam, can keep on schedule in the run game. All of those teams also made the playoffs and went far in it. Breece Hall, if he can improve in this area, the impact to the Jets offense will be huge. Keeping Justin Fields clean will be huge. And I think we have taken big steps in order to do that. This will do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Remember, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, engage with me in the comments and on social media at Spittin' Speeds. Follow me, hit me up, DM me with any questions you might have. And remember, if you want to hear more from me, I am the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on Sirius XM Channel 87. We are the fantasy channel. So many fantasy football implications for the NFL draft. We're talking fantasy baseball, NBA and NHL playoffs are going on. It doesn't matter. FTN Fantasy is a great website, a lot of great top content, a lot of great tools to help you as a fantasy player or a sports gambler, help you win your leagues and win that cash. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. It is another week. We will continue to talk every day this week, and the NFL schedule comes out this week, so we'll definitely be talking about that, seeing who the Jets have on the horizon later on this week. But that'll do it for this episode. We'll see y'all tomorrow, everybody. Have a great day. Peace.